New Zealand just released a new budget, and that new budget is not concerned with the gross domestic product, as most such budgets are. All we hear about is how will this affect the GDP, how will this affect the economic bottom line. But the new budget of Progressive Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern is concerned with well-being. In fact, Prime Minister Ardern calls it the first ever well-being budget. Now, New Zealand's not the first country to look at its budgeting process in this way. Bhutan, some years ago, measured what it called gross national happiness, or GNH, instead of the GDP. But this is the latest attempt to come up with a way to quantify government budgets and the national economy on terms that are other than these financial terms that really are the byproducts of a certain economic worldview based on capitalism in the aggregate and economic activity in the aggregate. As Jacinda Ardern says, she says, not in so many words, but she says government is there to make its citizens happy, and GDP alone, quote, and I'm quoting her here, does not guarantee improvement to our living standards, end quote, and quote, does not take into account who benefits and who is left out. So unlike Bhutan, she is thinking more specifically, a little more specifically, about people's financial well-being. But like Bhutan, she is not just thinking about the bottom line, because we've had many years now in this country where, for example, productivity has gone up, wealth has gone up, but the benefits have only gone to a very few, and the rest of us have been left out. Now, I remember when Bhutan did its gross national happiness index, part of me said, that's a great idea, and part of me said, well, maybe it's a little too, new agey or whatever, but I've talked to a lot of really smart economists who worked on that project of quantifying it. They did good work. And I've talked to a lot of other economists and other experts who say, yeah, you know what? It's not a bad idea. We really ought to be thinking along those terms. So just to talk a little bit more about New Zealand, now Prime Minister Ardern says that empathy is the trait most needed in political leaders nowadays. I would certainly agree with her. And she also says, quote, her government has, quote, laid the foundation for not just one well-being budget, but a different approach for government decision-making altogether. Do you think that's true? I kind of think it is. I kind of think I'll have to study New Zealand a little bit more, but I do think we need to radically reframe the way we look at the designing of a budget, the goals of a government in general. Now, of course, you could bet that Jacinda Ardern is getting some flack for this, and the center-right National Party, one of their politicians said, quote, New Zealanders won't benefit from a government that is ignoring the slowing economy and focusing instead on branding. We're facing significant economic risks over coming years, but this government is focusing on a marketing campaign. Well, okay. You're always going to get that kind of quote that this is just marketing, this is just salesmanship. But you know what? Gross domestic product, as we use it, in fact, a lot of the economic language that we use nowadays is marketing too. So maybe we should be thinking less about who's marketing and who isn't, and more about whether what they're marketing is or isn't a product we want to buy. And in this case, the product in question is the very definition of who we want to be as a society.